All right, looks like we're live again.
Okay, listen.
Okay. Item number 5. Consider approving a cost reimbursement agreement between Tualatin Utilities District and Chicken Ranch Ranch County.
Okay, thank you. For the returns, board members, the reason that this item is on the agenda, there's many reasons, I suppose, but this district and our predecessor agencies, districts, county, TRWD, had made many inroads into trying to secure water out of Maloney's. There is some water set aside for Tualatin County and TUD and Maloney's. It comes in many forms. These opportunities come in many forms. This particular one we have been trying to secure for decades. I don't know all the reasons. Perhaps Jesse knows why. All the reasons why we've never really crossed the finish line. But here we are today. Several years ago, by the way, Stephanie, who represents the chicken ranches here, and Jesse is going to help, with all the technical stuff. But several years ago, the tribe, chicken ranch tribe, came to TD and asked for some sort of a partnership in securing water out of the lungs. So there's a couple general managers ago, but we met off and on for the better part of a year and a half or 2 years now, and we've also met with the Bureau, so they understand what we're up against. Eric's team with Glenn, they did a water needs assessment, right? Boiled down to as long as the chicken ranch, they did their water needs assessment. So we had to prove up, what sort of amount of water we wanted. We didn't just go, we shouldn't have gone in there and just asked for an ungodly number without really a justification for it. So together we've done both our water needs assessment. And so but this agreement here is just the relationship that we're going to have with the tribe in moving forward with the Bureau on perfecting this contract. This agreement here doesn't guarantee a contract, right? We're pretty sure we're going to get a contract from the Bureau. Pretty certain we are, but this agreement itself is just the relationship between TUD and the tribe and how we're going to share the cost going forward on perfecting this contract. So I don't know if Jesse or Stephanie wants to say anything, but or if we have questions. All right, Jesse?
Thank you, Don. I don't have anything to add. I think Don did a nice job of summarizing the condition. The purpose of this agreement between TUD and the tribe is simply for the tribe to share in the costs associated with acquiring this water source, this contract with the Bureau of Reclamation. And it's based on a proportion of the water sought under the contract. TUD will be seeking a contract of 6,000 acre feet. Of that 6,000 acre feet, the tribe is water needs assessment allocates they're looking for about 3,500 acre feet, which means about 2,500 acre feet will be reserved for TUD's use. And we're going to split costs based upon the amount of water being sought by each respective entity. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there are, or if Stephanie has anything to add, that would be wonderful.
Director Rainey?
So my question is, I know the tribe is planning on pulling their water out of TUD. Is there any restriction on where either the tribe or TUD can pull the water out of New Orleans?
Well, go ahead, Jesse.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't sure to whom Director Ringen was directing that question, but no, as of right now, that hasn't been settled, Director Ringen. We're very early in the stages of negotiating with the Bureau. The first step was the Bureau said, well, how much water are you looking for? And that is very important because that can dictate what sort of steps are required, how long the process will be, what sort of approvals will be necessary. And so ultimately we decided on a relatively small number when you look at some of the other numbers, contracts for water out of New Melones. And as of right now, we have not limited, or the Bureau hasn't limited the diversion points for the water. I suspect that the tribe will be withdrawing its contract water out of the the Tulloch diversion point, but really Stephanie would be the best person to speak to that.
Good morning. So officially, I'm Stephanie Seuss, Director of, I don't know.
Representing the tribe.
Thank you. Depends on the day. Okay, so yes, we started this project 5-6 years ago. And it just, so here we are. So yes, we started trying to diversify the tribe's water portfolio. It started long history with the tribe, and I really thought, how much am I going to say today? But every time I speak about the tribe's water situation, I have to say about the history of the tribe. They were founded, federally recognized in 1908. In the 50s, there was something called California Indian Reorganization Act, and about 70 sovereign tribes lost their status. And technically, they were, this tribe was on about a 40-acre rancheria. Their lands were taken away, sold out from under them. They didn't get their lands back until the early 80s under a lawsuit brought by a Pomo woman by the name of Tilly Hardwick. She sued the federal government. And when the tribe came back into existence, they had 3 acres and 1 well. And from there, they started their economic venture, which was the bingo home. In 2012, they diversified their water portfolio by extending TUD water line at Chicken Ranch Road. When the drought hit the first time, and for us, in 2014, the concern was, because the district was going through, what do we do? You know, we started conserving. The tribe was like, we need to think a step beyond this, because again, they're thinking long-term. As we all are, I don't need to say we're not thinking long-term. But we were kind of tasked with how are we gonna find water? So, you know, we went to Maloney's and we started working with the Bureau. And so our first blind option was, can we buy water from you? Nope, we have no water to sell you, because the reservoir was built larger than the watershed had. And when we started looking at this CBP situation, the only entity that was really written in was the district. And truly, it takes an act of Congress to start this. And we started this process under the Obama administration and the Brown administration. And a variety of entities overseeing this district. So here we are in 2023. We started engineering and doing a variety of feasibility studies. We looked at your lower system and we ran models on the Stanislaus River. And we were also dealing with phase 1 of the water quality control plan, because you have to realize New Maloney's is technically owned and operated by the Bureau of Reclamation, but it's also overseen by the state of California for water quality control in the Delta. So we had to look at that 40% unimpaired flow that the state was looking at. And that means take away all the dams on that, take more 40% flows, head west. What does that look like? So we knew where obviously the pumps were coming out of water, how far would the district's pumps have to go in, downstream, whatever. So so we looked right over Table Mountain from where we are, and as the levels go down, they run away from you, and we would never catch them. So then we went to the dam face on New Maloney's side, and we've got such a hydraulic up and down, about 500 feet of leveling there, and that wasn't gonna work. So we went to some downstream irrigation districts that we worked with before. And we didn't want to get in line for actually purchasing a water right, because that was like, oh God. So we just finished negotiations and purchase of about 1,500 acre feet of water with OID and SSJID. And we are going to have our point of diversion, as Jesse said, right below the dam at Tulloch. It's tight in there. Yesterday I was in the field all day again with the Bureau. We have been engineering this system through mitigation. We've had our cultural, we've had our biologic people, we've had our engineers side by side. We've looked at constructability. And we are doing both NEPA and CEQA together. So yes, we will be diverting water from that point and bringing it through 7 mile buried pipe. We've got about a 700 lift out of the canyon to our highest point. We are varying our pump sizes. We're not taking all the water at the same time. We've got a long-term horizon. We based our water needs assessment on ag lands across the street. We looked at M&I. All that said, this agreement is huge for us. There's a lot of trust involved in this on many levels. And I have to give it to your staff and your general manager. Barbara, your former chair. Jesse, certainly, to get to this point. It's not easy getting, everyone on the same path, the same understanding about what CVP is, what it is not, when you can take that water, when you can't. Storage capacities. When we signed our agreements with OID and SSJID, that water is strictly for the tribe's use. We cannot sell it. We cannot use it for anything else. It's strictly for the tribe. They could have said, we don't want you to go forward with any other option for water. You can't go out for a CVP contract. You can't engage with anyone else, but they did not. So this CVP water, again, is another, just another alternative. We have to go through basis negotiation once we get through the environmental docs. That's a 2-year process. When you look at who's being cut off, typically CVP or state water contractors are cut off first. It's just the way it goes. We did have concerns, I shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna say it, that when we talked about this, I think 2-3 years ago, some numbers were floated around, like more water, but you can't do that. This is over allocated. And the Bureau was very insistent, gotta keep these numbers within reason. Because there's a lot of people out there, who are keeping an eye on this particular watershed and this particular river. You have to be reasonable. You have to be prudent. Oh, I hate that word lately. Sorry, I didn't mean to use that word. You have to be aware of what you're gonna do with the water, what your beneficial uses are, and just, focus on that. More water is not the merrier. You have to be reasonable because, again, this is California. These are drought times. These are flood times. These are all sorts of times. And we tried bifurcation of these contracts with the Bureau because the district was not ready to go forward with this process because it's not a comfortable process. We tried all sorts of things not to push anyone into something anyone didn't want to do. But I will tell you, again, we certainly appreciate the willingness to help us, to join in with us on this process. And I guess I'm thanking you for signing or approving something you haven't approved yet. So I'll just stop there, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. But, thank you.
I have a
Yes.
question, Stephanie. So 7 miles and 700 feet of lift, it's quite a task.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
And you're gonna have to get easements, I would imagine.
You know, here's the beauty of this. Well, tribal trust land backs up to federal land.
Oh,
Yeah. Now, different federal partners, which is a whole other story. Some of it, when Maloney's was built originally by OID and SSJ. And they have 600,000 acre feet of water in that reservoir. When New Maloney's came in, it was built by the Army Corps of Engineers. And now it carries about 2.4 million acre feet of water. 45,000 acre feet of water evaporates on an annual basis. We are sizing our project overall for about 5,000 acre feet. Right now, we are engineering it based on our pump sizes for about 1,500 acre feet. I'm not going to give you a cost on this, but I have costs and I have electrical costs. But when you don't have water, it doesn't really matter, does it?
it does not.
Right. So when the Army Corps left, and there's the Bureau of Land Management property, all of this land was supposed to be turned over, conveyed to the Bureau. But through all of our research, there are some parcels that weren't conveyed. So some of it's still in Army Corps, some of it is BLM. So we are working, once again, because you would think, God forbid they're watching me, that everyone would have the same standard for either environmental species or whatever, but we find when we're in the field or on our monthly phone calls, wait, you review under that? No, I review under this. Oh, wait, and so be prepared. And so, but we're here for you because we've been through this before. And so, yeah, but it's, and again, that was kind of the fortunate part because, we had just finished going through Caltrans and my other fear was, oh my God, do I have to go back down the highway and take a ride on Burns Ferry and go past the baseline camp and that route? But the godsend of this project was federal to federal. CEQA comes up because at the level of 515 elevation in Tulloch, everything above 515 is Bureau, everything below 515 is Tulloch or Trident. So that's where we hit CEQA. Yeah.
I've got one more question
Okay.
for Jesse. Jesse?
Yep.
On this proposed resolution, it's for 6,000 acre feet, 3,500 acre feet to the tribe. Would it be conceivable that the feds could come back and say, no, we're not going to give you that 6,000 acre feet, we're going to give you 5,000 acre feet? And so is that possible? Number one.
Anything's possible, but I would bracket that as extremely unlikely. We have encountered no resistance from the Bureau due to that number. In fact, they were pleased that the number, they thought that we could probably go up to 10. The problem is that as Don and I commented previously, and as Stephanie has commented, you have to perform a water needs analysis. You're not just allowed to, grab a number out of the air and say, this is what we want. We have to look at a development schedule, at a conceivable or realistic way of coming up with a number and justify that number to the Bureau that this is what we think that the amount of water we will need to develop over the next, I think it was a 50-year time frame, Eric?
Yes, correct.
50 years. So extremely unlikely, Jeff, the answer to your question.
Okay, the only reason I ask that is because if they were to reduce that, the way I read the resolution, 3,500 goes to the tribe. So if we did get a reduced amount, it appears to me that the reduction would be on our side. And that's what I was asking about, Jesse. So
Well, what we really agreed to here is a cost share of 58%. 58% being assumed by the tribe. And if something happens where the Bureau comes back and says, well, we want to renegotiate the amount, I have little doubt that the tribe would meet in good faith with TUD, and I'm sure we'd come up with some reasonable solution to that problem.
That answers my question.
Yeah, we can do
Anybody
that.
else? Director Bailey.
Yeah, I agree that this is really important. And for my reasons, it protects the tribe and it protects TUD, but it also is a time marker so that we don't have to continue in a biblical way to reinvent the numbers and the wheel with staff changes. This arrests any of this project drift and number drift and it just puts it down so that we don't backslide if we have a change of staff, change of general managers. It really protects this process. So that's where I feel it's important, not just protecting the tribe and TUD, but it protects the integrity of the process. So no matter what people are on this board, this thing can move forward. That's the way I look at it. And in good faith and to promote our trust responsibilities with the tribe.
Director Ringan.
So I just have a real quick comment. As big as the tribe's project is, and it's kind of an eye-opener as to how much is involved in it, engineering now has one on their shoulders at TUD, and that is to make sure that those pumps in New Maloney's don't go through that high and dry from drought to buried in silt and so on. We need to have that operational out there. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Director.
Multiple questions.
Go ahead.
Right now, we're looking at a split of the cost of the contract with the Bureau, not actually a cost of water. Obviously, will there be a future cost for the water coming out of Maloney's? And how is that shared? Such as our diversion from the watershed right now coming down through the ditches. We have customers on the ditch that, maybe in Jamestown, but there may be projects in Point Martin that, are cost group. Is this something along those lines, or is this standalone, the tribe will pay the cost of whatever the water is in the future? Just straight across. I mean, the tribe is actually building the infrastructure that will take it out of the Tulla diversion. So this will just be a portion of TUD's contract.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I had my hand up. I wanted to further address President Kern's question. And President Kearns, if you look at paragraph 9 on page 3 of the agreement, you'll see that that's a no guarantee clause. And so through that, what TUD is, or what the parties are agreeing, is that there's no guarantee that anything is going to be committed to until we get to the end of the process. And TUD can back out if something goes, very wrong through this process, horribly expensive, who knows? But that provision would come into effect if the amount of water was reduced and we were unable to reach some sort of a reasonable accommodation between TUD and the tribe. So I just wanted to give you a little additional support for my answer.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay, and to Director Boatwright, the question is, what about the cost of water? The way this is currently being framed with the Bureau is, as Stephanie noted, TUD is in a very unique position through the CVP legislation that it actually was allocated water. It's been a standing allocation, and TUD has never utilized that until now. And so when the tribe went to the Bureau seeking water out of New Melones, the Bureau connected them and said, well, you know, the only entity that is eligible for water right now is TUD. You're going to have to go through TUD. And so what we're negotiating, Director Boatwright, with the Bureau is TUD is going to be the prime contractor for this 6,000 acre feet, this expected 6,000 acre feet of water. And the tribe will have a subcontract with TUD under which it will be responsible for its own use and for its own payment of water. That is our expectation. And so that is the way we are intending to frame it. And we will, you know, if something changes, we will be sure, TUD staff and I will be sure that the tribe is going to be responsible for their share of the costs when and if that water becomes available. I hope that answers your question.
I think so. So the allocation of water for TUD out in Maloney's, that has to do with the county of origin water rights? And the
It has to do with multiple issues. There were many issues, I was going to use the word arguments. I'm trying to be a little bit more artful about it. But there were many discussions going on at the time when New Melones was developed, when the CVP was approved in legislation. TUD or its predecessors were actually seeking its own water rights out of the area. And so ultimately what was agreed upon was that when or if New Melones was built, that an allocation would be reserved for TUD. One of the basis was county of origin, but there were other reasons for it. Thank you.
Now during the legislation and all that for, you know, for the population of Tuolumne County, was the allocation out of Maloney's anticipated to be higher? We're talking 6,000 acre feet. My recollection from back in the early 90s and stuff, not being totally in the loop on all that, that this allocation of water was a much larger amount of water.
Over the past several decades, many numbers have been put forth as what Tuolumne County's future needs would be. 6,000 is on the lower end, without a doubt. But that is what we were able to document. And by going to the Bureau and asking for 6 at this time, this does not preclude TUD in the future, if it desires, from going back for an increase. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, actually, that's a very good answer. Point of diversion for this water was discussed a little bit earlier. Would TUD be allowed to, you know, develop storage higher on the hill, i.e. absorb that water out of spill water from, i.e. Lyons or somewhere else as a higher diversion?
That has been, Don and I have discussed that potential, and I look forward to bringing it up to the Bureau, because I think that while utilizing the existing pumps that are in New Melones is one way, it would be beneficial if the Bureau is willing to accept a different diversion point higher up so that the district would not have to pump the water, it could take it by gravity. But one of the, you know, a reason, not the only reason, a reason why the district is seeking this water is as a backup emergency supply in case something happens to the main canal. And so if something happens to the main canal, taking it out at Lyons isn't going to be an option. We'll have to find another location, and that may ultimately mean we'll have to utilize those pumps in New Melones. I don't know enough about all of the possible diversion points, but that would be something that I'd be happy to discuss with staff offline and perfect that and either come back to the board or have it written into the contract with the Bureau.
Can we change the duration of the contract? I.e. it's been stated for 50 years. I'm sorry, that just seems like a low number to me. But as far as is that a standard number with the Bureau?
It is a standard number, Director Boatwright, yes. I expect to add, I have a handful of clients with similar contracts with the Bureau, and what I've managed to negotiate in the past is a right of renewal rather than just a potential. And so I do plan on adding, if I can get there, a right of renewal of the contract upon its termination in 50 years.
Question for staff. Is the 2,500 acre feet of water that we're currently discussing, is this just being looked at as a emergency standby water, or is there a anticipated use time?
Eric, probably go a little bit more detail, but we had Glenn with the consultant Stantec, I think, went through a water needs assessment. And so what they did basically is look at lands, you know, Jamestown and south and west, and see what lands water be used for ag purposes and for M&I. And through doing all of that, we came up with this 2,500 acre.
So the anticipated full use of the 2,500 acres would be based on population growth and business development?
Yes, and our use of it may not be every year. It may be that as growth occurs, if we reach a pinch point in our current system, for instance, we all know we try to acquire PG&E. If we were able to acquire PG&E, then our flexibility, operational flexibility, and our security goes way up. But if we are unsuccessful for some reason there, this would be a relief during a dry year. If the pumps are still in water, it would also be for the emergency that Jesse referred to of the main canal went out. So we don't have a real clear picture on what and when, how much and when exactly we would use it. We were just tasked with a water needs assessment to kind of come up with what's the maximum use based on ag and residential. And we know that the county and others believe that there could be more development in the South County for many reasons. One being the casino, you know, there's going to be a job center down there. So we just think this is setting us up for the ability to use surface water from lines through our current system, supplement with water from new Malones as development occurs.
Would we have the infrastructure to supply the tribes water through our existing system?
A portion of it, I suppose. So the point of diversion was our pump station versus their pump station. I think that a small amount is a portion.
Yes, Director Boatwright, if I could jump in there, it's tough for me. I can't see who you're looking at, whether you're looking at the screen, me waiting for a response or not. But the idea here, and I think Stephanie will support it, is that the tribe wants to be self-sufficient. And so the diversion point that they're developing, they want to be on their own and they want to have that. And so there is not an expectation at this time that TUD is going to be providing Bureau water through its own system to the tribe. That's a possibility, but I am unaware of, we've certainly never discussed that on any commitment level, that's for sure.
Yes, that's true.
I was just, you know, that question, and it's leading, and it may go off too much of a tangent. i.e. if we were able to supply the water from a higher diversion point that avoided the use of our Maloney's pump, obviously there'd be a cost savings as far as electrical, 700-foot lift.
Yeah.
7 miles of pipeline where that's something, you know, like I said, that just leads into a too far off the scope. I do have a question for the tribe though. How soon would the tribe be able to use 3,500 acre feet of water? And that's on an annual basis, is that correct? Is that seasonal? Annual basis?
Well, so right now, our water use, assuming, so we have a ramp up rate with I won't say Trident because it's separate with the 2 districts. But we have about a 40-year ramp up rate just to the 1,500. Just to the 1,500 that we have an agreement with them for. It's about 40-year ramp up rate. Our M&I numbers with the resort built out is around 200 acre feet per year. So again, 200 acre feet per year for us is worth 700, 7 miles of underground pipe, HDD drilling, micro tunneling power. To get to 5,000, who knows? Unlike you and I, possibly, tribes typically don't move. These are their heritage lands. These are their rancherias, reservations, whatever you want to call it. They're very cautious about their resources, how they manage them, and the longevity of them. So again, when Stanislaus is being divvied up, when we don't know the future of California and water, they want to make sure they have a straw everywhere they can. You know, when the wells were going dry and Tuolumne County became the number 2 on the list for failing wells, a lot of them were in Jamestown. 3 acres in a well made them very nervous. When the first drought came along, and numbers were being thrown around like, well, we're maybe 88 days from running out of water. That didn't sit well. They're very independent thinkers, and like, we've had partners, we've had state partners, we've had federal partners who have at any given moment say, you are no longer a federally recognized tribe. It's not just Chicken Ranch. A lot of tribes I work with all have the same approach. Thanks for the help, but we want to be standing on our own, independent, sovereign nations. So again, I don't know when we'd get to 5,000, but even getting to 1,500, it is worth the investment to build this system, because they don't want to be caught in another situation where they don't have water to operate their economic venture, to diversify their economic portfolio, to, when COVID hit, it's like, we need to maybe look at, a farm across the street to provide for our own people. So it's a generational approach. One that I've never, been working in Indian country, I guess for now 10, 11 years. One that never has hit me smack in the face like this project has. So you just go with it. But we stand by our numbers and just keep looking down the, future.
Do we know a estimated cost of the contract with the Bureau going through the process?
That's, good answer.
We have, the short answer is not exactly. We received a proposal for the environmental work that was $148,000. And then we know that we need to do some temperature and salinity modeling. I should say we need to hire someone to do that. And so somewhere in the $175,000 to $200,000 range is what I think we collectively think at this very moment. But we'll know better as we refine the scope of work for the environmental.
Okay. For clarification, is that TUD's portion or is that the entire contract?
That's the entire contract.
We basically set aside about that much also, just ballpark figures. So if you're looking at 200,000, we've set aside about 200,000 as well. And we've done, so again, our environmentals on our construction end, and we had to do the same thing, salinity modeling at Vernalis. You can't make this up for 1,500 acre feet of water, which there are no charts or graphs or measurements along, below Goodwin or anywhere else that you can find this stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's what we had to do as well, so got you covered.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you all.
Thanks, David. Good questions. Any other director, comment or questions? Okay, we'll open it up to the public, general public.
Nobody online.
Okay, bring it back to the board.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I make a motion, for, approving a cost reimbursement agreement between Palm Utilities District and the Chicken Ranch Rio.
I would second that.
Okay, been moved by Director Ringen and seconded by Director Boatright. Any other further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Passes 4-0.
Thank you, Stephanie.
No, thank you all.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, next item.
Item number 6, discussion regarding Assembly Bill 2449, enhanced teleconferencing and recent developments relating to Assembly Bill 360.
Okay, is this Abby or?
Or Melissa and Jesse, then
Okay.
Melissa's gonna take this one, her and Jesse.
Okay. Jesse, do you want to start off?
I can. Okay, that sounds like a yes. Good after, or I guess it's still good morning. Good morning, board. So as a result of AB 361, which was passed during the pandemic to simplify and frankly make meetings safer, public meetings safer, there's been a groundswell of support to make changes, permanent changes, because the changes made in AB 361 to the Brown Act, allowing for virtual meeting for board members to virtually attend public meetings. There was a groundswell of support for this. And so, and to make elements, there were people pushing to make AB 361 permanent, just all the way around. There was opposition from the public. The public preferred or wanted an obligation for public boards to physically meet at a location and go back to pre-COVID rules. But ultimately, what was worked out was a hybrid between pre-COVID Brown Act meeting rules and post-COVID Brown Act rules. And so what AB 2449 allows for is a hybrid between pre-COVID rules and COVID rules under 361. Under 360, well, let's go back to, let's talk briefly about pre-COVID rules. Under pre-COVID rules, board members were always allowed to meet virtually, but there are restrictions. A quorum of the board must meet at the physical location of the meeting. So in your case, you have a board of 5. That would mean you would always be required to have a quorum, 3 board members at your location. And then 2 board members could call in, Zoom in, Teams in, whatever platform you wanted to use. But in order to do that, where they are calling in from has to be on the agenda. They have to post the agenda at that location, and they have to allow any members of the public who want to participate from that location to participate from that location. So if Director Boatwright wanted to call in from his home, he could do that. As long as the other three board members were there in person, he could call in from home, but his address, his home address would have to be on the agenda, and anybody in his neighborhood who wanted to come and participate in the meeting from Director Boatwright's house, they would have the right to do so. That's pre-COVID rules. Now, when COVID happened, due to the lockdown, the government did not want us contacting one another. They wanted us separate to slow the spread of the virus. And so the requirement that we meet together was removed. And it allowed board members to call in from whatever location. You did not have to post your address. You did not have to be identified on the agenda and along those lines. Now, under 2449, what they've come up with is a hybrid between the two. And frankly, I don't think it improves much. The changes are not significant. So under 2449, you will still be allowed to meet virtually under the pre-COVID rules. That means 3 board members in the office or at the district, and then 1 or 2 could call in, but you have to have it on the agenda. It has to be open to the agenda or open to the public, et cetera. But now under 2449, what you're obligated to do is you do not have to post your location of the meeting on the agenda as long as the person who is calling in or virtually attending doesn't do it more than 20% of the meetings out of a year. They have to disclose if anybody over 18 is with them in the room. There needs to be, I don't want to call them emergency circumstances, but urgent, exigent type conditions warranting the need to call in, such as a sudden illness of a family member, childcare, injury, things of this sort. And so you would be allowed to virtually attend. Board members would be eligible to virtually attend in those situations, but it's only for a few meetings a year, and there are numerous strings attached. So I don't think it changes much. So ultimately what this means for you is this is January 24th. At the end of February, AB 360, or the current health emergency, our governor has stated, he let us all know in advance that he's going to lift the emergency order that was issued during COVID at the end of February. And so that means beginning in March, you're going to have to start, well, the board is already meeting physically. And so I don't think this is going to change much for your board. But if you want to meet, if somebody wants to virtually attend after March 1, you're going to have to either go through the pre-COVID structure, or you can go under 2449 with its very limited advantages. And if I left anything out, Melissa, please fill it in. If not, I am happy to answer questions.
Anything else, Melissa?
I don't have a name.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Okay. All right, so this is informational only item, so we don't need to take a vote on this. We'll move on.
Okay. Okay, next item number 7. Discussion and approval of timeline for the selection of a candidate to fill the vacancy on the board of directors.
Okay, so as you know, as of the last board meeting, former director Murphy resigned, so we're down to 4. There's a couple of options that this board has to fill that position. One is to hold a special election, which would cost lots of money, or you could appoint one. So Jesse is going to explain to us how we're going to go about that.
Okay, thank you, Don. I had just clicked on my mute button and when I heard my name. So okay, Obviously, Director Murphy resigned at the last meeting, and so that sets in motion the statutory process to fill a vacancy. It's found in the government code. Melissa included it in your board packet there. And so under government code, section 1780, this board has 60 days to fill the vacancy. During those 60 days, the first 15 days, you have to advertise the vacancy in 3 public locations. Melissa has posted it at the district office, and I believe at a couple of post offices or public messaging boards. That, you know, it's kind of archaic, the physical posting requirements, but it's been around for decades. So you still have to comply with it, even though it's more likely that people view the district's website than go to a message board to view the district's agenda or anything like that. But nevertheless, 1780 requires the posting of the vacancy in 3 physical locations within the district. Melissa chose the district office and a couple of post offices within the districts where there is no representative. She also posted it on your website, and I believe she also ran it. She ran it 3 times in the Union Democrat. And so she has gone above and beyond the public notice that is required under 1780. Now, for those 15 days, the board cannot do anything. That is the public notice period, and that is fixed. After those 15 days have elapsed, the board can appoint a new director to the vacancy. Since this district just went into elections by division / district, depending on how you use that terminology, I told Melissa that whatever nominee whatever nominees you interview, they should be from those 2 districts within which there are vacancies. You cannot appoint 2 trustees from a division that already has a representative on the board, because the board has already taken action that all future elections will be by division. And so you need to stick with that. And so, but you only have 1 vacancy to fill. And so it's not explicitly covered in the government code, but it just stands to reason that you can pick a replacement director from either of those divisions, since you do not have a representative currently on the board. There is no any nominee has to meet the statutory requirements for being a director, right? They have to be a resident, a voter, those 2 requirements. They have to live within their division. And then ultimately it's a question of qualifications of who the board thinks of the nominees, of the names submitted, who it believes will be a good representative of that division and a proper director of TUD. I will stop there. Again, Melissa, if I left anything out, please fill it in. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer questions. I think I covered it.
I just wanted to clarify that we have not posted yet, Jesse's. I'm
Oh.
waiting for board's approval on the posting and the statement of interest. So,
I see the dates there. Yeah, okay.
Right, we have not posted anything yet, but we will after citizens meetings.
Proposed time.
Correct.
Director Rainey.
For clarification, what are the 2 districts? Is it 2 and 5?
2 and 5.
Okay, and then how will it be determined that those that apply are actually from one of those communities? How is that going to be proven?
Jesse, you can help me on this one. They'll submit their address, and of course, it will go to the county as well. But is there anything additional that we can do?
No. In that nomination form, we did ask for their resident address, and the idea being that we would submit that address to the county. If we are unable to determine which district they're in, we'll have the county make that determination, make sure they're eligible.
Good. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm gonna-
I do have a question, I'm sorry, I just wanted to follow up with that. So it would be much like a regular election when people apply to run for a seat, correct, Jesse?
You got it. Absolutely. It will be no different. Yep.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Barbara.
Good questions. Yeah, and I can see on the statement of interest, they have to declare where they live and which district that it's in, or division. One question, and I've been through this a couple times, but it's been a while, for the interview. This is all done in public so that we don't do anything behind closed doors, right? Right.
Correct.
Okay. Now, is the board allowed, or in our questioning, in our interview process, can we develop questions to interview questions? Let's say we have 10 candidates and we would like to ask each candidate the same questions, and determine, like you had said, that the fit, I guess, or something. So do we develop those questions? Or how do we make sure we're not violating the Brown Act when we question each individual?
You
So
may.
consistency.
Yeah, you may develop those questions. That is not a requirement in the government code. However, it is very common for my other clients to develop, for their boards, to develop a list of questions. Usually, since you have staff, I suggest perhaps that maybe one one director work with staff and develop a list of questions. I would like to think that there wouldn't be a whole lot of disagreement, because I mean, what you're looking for is just some qualifications, perhaps a demonstrated interest in TUD and the services it provides. I would like to think it would be a fairly straightforward process to come up with a handful of questions to ask each nominee applicant.
Yeah, if I could make a suggestion, maybe have the outreach HR type committee, whoever that is, to work with Abby and Melissa to develop some questions.
Okay, well, we haven't, I withheld the
Right, we have voted.
committee assignments because of Director Murphy's resignation. So I guess we could do an ad hoc committee.
We could do an ad hoc, okay, after we approve this, then we could maybe have an ad hoc.
Director Boatright?
Director Balin's finished. The applications, they just need, Jesse, they just need to look the same as an elected official, as far as if they were going to go down to the county elections office, and fill out the application process for being elected to a board member, elected as a board member.
I am unsure of what specific process Tuolumne County uses when somebody runs for elective office, but what Melissa and I prepared was a very simplified application nominee form, name, address, statement of qualifications. I forget precisely what was on it. And, but, you know, if the county has its own requirements, then, you know, particular mailing address or something like that that the nominee would like, that could be accommodated after the person's
And then, you know, a question as to why would this this individual have to be from one of the unrepresented divisions, i.e. Director Murphy's seat was elected at large, and this appointment would be for completing the duration of her elected capacity.
This board made the decision that all future board members, all future elections was going to be by division. And so it split everything up, and the Director Murphy was in a division where there was more than one representative, but now that she has resigned, that means by virtue of this board's declaration or decision to hold all future elections by division, that means that you simply have to have the nominee from one of the vacant divisions fill that fill that vacancy.
And that individual is obviously up for, or that seat, whichever they would fill, would still be up for re-election in November 24th, correct?
Correct.
Yes, that is correct. They will only hold the seat until the next election.
Is that it, Director Bowman?
If TUD defaults on appointing somebody, doesn't it fall upon the county superintendents to appoint a person to fill that position?
The Board of Supervisors, you are correct. But they can only act after 60 days have elapsed, and there needs to be a petition submitted to the County Board of Supervisors. And I don't envision that happening as long as this board is active in seeking a replacement.
All right, thank you.
Director Bailey?
As I recall, Jesse, I think, and you, Don, when you opened up this discussion, is this board can approve a timeline to interview and appoint, or we go to the county and actually have a special election. As I recall from my early years here, we were on a special election cycle. And the reason we got off of that, and I did a 5th year instead of 4, so we could get on the county schedule, is that it was costing the district $48,000 to have a special election. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. It's a little bit more efficient, I think, if we collectively interview and appoint, because it's 2 years, zeroing out the balance, like you said. It's filling a vacant division, takes care of that. I just feel that that would be the most cost-efficient way to go about it.
Anybody else? Okay, I got a question, Jesse. If we do decide to do the ad hoc committee to come up with the questions like Director Balin had asked, would that lock us into those questions, or could each individual director have their own question or questions that they could ask as well during the interview process?
Well, it would be really hard to restrain or prohibit a board member from having their own question if they wanted to add something to the, if you know, for example, you know, I'm sure everybody here has interviewed people for positions of employment, and oftentimes those interviews can be very organic. You can come in with a specific list of questions, but the answers you're getting back are maybe a bit surprising. And so you start to ask follow-up questions, and I imagine that this isn't going to be any different. And so I think you could use a formatted system, and then at the same time, President Kearns, you wouldn't want it a free-for-all where somebody comes in with a list of 30 questions. You'll be there all afternoon asking, potentially, as Director Balin mentioned, if you have 10 nominees, 10 applicants, you could be there. This could stretch over days. So you'd want to cap perhaps on the number of questions or follow-up questions, but I don't see how you could prohibit a board member from exercising their obligation to find an appropriate fit.
Yeah, and so good. So we have that flexibility if we needed it.
Yes.
And then you just said something that brought up another question. Director Bailey mentioned 10 applications, if there was 10 applicants. Do we have to interview all 10 applicants, or can we weed through them first or not?
I don't see how.
2 or 3.
Yeah, who would be in charge of dismissing half of the 10? That's
why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Good question.
So you're saying then that if we get 10 or 20 applicants, we're gonna have to interview each and every one.
Yes. Yeah, as long as they meet the qualifications. Yes.
President Kearns, in the past when we have done an appointment, another way that they have submitted their questions, and Director Bailey, you may remember this, we also had it so that each director submitted so many questions to myself. I made a list, we brought it in front of the board, and then they picked the 10 questions or however that they wanted to do. That was another avenue, that's how we did it the last time.
Okay, thank you. And then back to the number of applicants, again, one more follow-up. When you said meet the criteria, meet the requirements, have to live in the district, be a resident, and whatnot. So that's one way it could be weeded out. If we were to get applicants from Sonora, from your district, or from Lisa Murphy's current district, or the one she just resigned from, I guess. So anyway, okay, all right, I think I'm clear on that. You had one more question, Milo?
I like Melissa's idea, I mean, it worked in the past. And the link is very easy to follow in this, when somebody who's interested could click. I've already had one person call, and I said, click on that, and they did, and they said, oh, I see, I don't live in that division. So, you know, if they're interested, they should do that work.
Good point. Any other questions? Okay, this is an action item, so we'll go ahead and open this up then to the public. Anybody here? Man? How about on the Zoom meeting?
Not indicating that.
Okay, brings it back to the board.
I move that we adopt this timeline.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved by Director Balin and seconded by Director Ringen to approve this timeline. Any further discussion?
Quick question, so approval of the timeline, does that mean 60 days starts today? Or is this 60 days from time of resignation by Director Murphy?
It's resignation, wasn't it, Jesse?
Yes.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, passes 4-0. Okay, staff reports.
I don't have much to report, because in the past, what's noteworthy is I had a meeting this afternoon with Tracy Riggs for that conversation.
Anything, Eric, or Steve, or Patty?
I can go for just a
Go
little
for
bit.
it, yes.
So I think you heard, but staff was obviously really busy the past month. They all did a great job with everything, a lot of people working overtime. A lot of different emergencies all over the place. They just did very good. We were having OES meetings daily for 2 weeks. I think we got them last Tuesday, is that right? Last one. We're still finding issues, different places, water treatment plants, trees down, things like that. So what we're doing is working with the county, doing an IDE, I don't remember what that stands for.
Initial damage
It's
assessment.
just, yeah. So we're doing that, we're filling the paperwork out, we send it to the county so they have it, so, it's just, we'll just keep working forward with that as we go and see if we can't get reimbursed for some of those damages.
Good job, Eric. Good job. Your crew, good job. And I know Director Ringen asked you before the meeting started that nobody got hurt, so that's good. That's even better.
That is very good.
Okay, any other staff reports? Abby?
Just a short one. Yeah, very well done by the staff, and we plan to bring forth a resolution for appreciation for the staff at the next board meeting. And then just one recognition for a staff member who passed a test, Nicholas Hayden, in our distribution department, passed his distribution 1 certification. So very proud of him for doing that. He's a meter technician. So
Congratulations, Nicholas.
that's the end of my report.
Okay, directors, communications. Who wants to go first?
I have nothing to report.
I guess I can go. On January 12th, attended the Mountain County Water Resource Association Legislative Committee meeting, and it was a very productive meeting, as usual, but this one was particularly because we interviewed our new dual advocacy, I can't talk, yeah, I'm not gonna try that, lobbyist firms. It's two separate ones, and they're well-known in Sacramento, very well connected, and so Mountain Counties now has folks that will be bringing the legislative committee and then finally the board information that they will need to make decisions on various bills and laws and things like that, as well as try to work on our all of California water project that they've taken on. So that's it for me.
All right.
No reports this time.
Okay, and I don't either. So, Melissa, do you want to read the closed session item? Yeah, and I will be recusing myself, so Director, Vice President Roman will be conducting the closed session.
And Jesse, you'll be sticking around for the closed session item.
I'll be approaching true.
Okay. Closed session, item A, conference with real property negotiators, property APN 083-200-002. Agency negotiators, Don Perkins, Eric Johnson. Other party to negotiation, Christopher and Trista Hackler. Other negotiation, price and terms of payment.
We still have another in the room.
We going to close session? Yeah.
Yes,
Sorry.
now we're gonna go into closed session, so they are allowed to stay and hear that.
Thanks, Elaine.
Okay.
Can we take a 5-minute break, is that okay?
Yeah, I was just gonna temporarily close the open session and then say that we're gonna go into closed session after a 5-minute.
I'm gonna knock this door.
So,
We something was talking about, you know,
and then the operational already back to the vision of diversification. It also needs on portfolio diversification. Yes. And it's revenue diversification, correct? Because they already source revenue, correct?
Well, that part of this relationship hasn't been defined yet. That was one question.
reconvening our board meeting in open session. And we have a reportable action on a 3-0 vote to move forward on the property contract acquisition. And I think that's about all I need to say.
Director Meany, it's actually an item on the agenda. So what I'll do is I'll read the item and then you will vote.
Oh, then.
Correct.
The board can approve it. The board approved it in closed session. And so he's stating what was approved in closed session, Melissa. And then with the execution, they're authorizing Jeff to sign it, even though he had to recuse himself from this item.
So you could go there.
So then I would read item C and they would vote on that, Jesse?
Yeah, the execution by Director Kearns, President Kearns.
Okay, so I'll read that. Item C, which is consider executing a purchase and sale agreement with Christopher and Tessa Hatler for 0.295 acre parcel in the Cedar Ridge area.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Yes. So it's 3-0.
Are we all done?
But you're not.
Okay, so we still gotta close.
Adjourn the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff, the board voted to put you on all kinds of other committees.
Oh, good. Good lad. That's what I needed. Yeah, all right. Okay, so where are we at? And we have just adjourned, that's it. Okay. I hereby adjourn the meeting. Thank you.